There are two kinds of truths in a marriage, the ones you share and the ones you survive. I was about to discover a third kind, the ones that make you wonder if you ever knew your wife at all. I found the notebook on a Tuesday. Brooke had left early for her therapy appointment, and I was looking for the spare car keys she'd borrowed last week. Her nightstand drawer stuck the way it always did, and when I yanked it open, a leather-bound journal slid forward. The cover was soft, expensive, the kind of thing she'd buy herself as a self-care gift. I should have closed the drawer. I should have respected her privacy, but something made me pick it up, flip it open to a random page, and read the words that would change everything. Things I haven't told him. The list started small. She didn't like my mother. She'd faked pleasure during our first year together. She'd gone through my phone once. Petty betrayals, the kind every marriage probably hides. I almost smiled at number 5. She hated our house. I'd always suspected that. Then the secrets got heavier. Number 7 hit me like a punch to the chest. The abortion before the wedding. He doesn't know. I did the math automatically, the way my brain always works. 3 months before our wedding. We'd been on a break during that window. Her idea. The baby couldn't have been mine. My hands were steady as I kept reading. Number 10. An affair. 8 months. Number 11. $47,000 stolen from my investment account. Her father helped hide it. Number 12. She was planning to leave me within 6 months. Number 13. She'd already talked to a divorce lawyer. And then the 14th entry. It had been crossed out multiple times, scratched through with such force the pen had torn the paper. But I could still read it. Every word. What really happened to Tyler? The night at the lake. What I did. What I can never undo. Tyler. My brother. Dead 3 years now. Drowned at our family cabin in what everyone called a tragic accident. A relapse, they said. He'd been sober for 2 years, but addiction is a monster that never really sleeps. I'd believed that story. I'd mourned him while sleeping next to his killer. I photographed every page with my phone. 37 pictures, each one a nail in the coffin of my marriage. Then I placed the notebook exactly where I'd found it, closed the drawer, and walked downstairs to start dinner. When Brooke came home at 6:30, I was draining pasta at the sink. "Smells amazing." She dropped her purse on the counter and kissed my cheek. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion, just felt like cooking." She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching me. "You're in a good mood." "Am I?" I kept my voice light. "Maybe I just missed you." "That's sweet," she smiled. That smile I'd trusted for 9 years. "I had a tough day." "Oh? What happened?" "Just work stuff. The Henderson campaign is falling apart, and guess who has to pick up the pieces?" She sighed dramatically. "Sometimes I wonder why I bother." "You bother because you're good at it. You always know what to say." "How was therapy?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "It was good. Dr. Reese thinks I'm making real progress." I served her the pasta with the homemade sauce I'd been simmering for 2 hours. Poured her a glass of the red wine she liked. Sat across from her at the table where we'd shared 1,000 meals. "I'm proud of you for doing this," I said. "The therapy, I mean. Working on yourself." "Thanks, babe." She twirled her fork through the linguine. "It's been really helpful, processing things." "What kind of things?" She hesitated, just for a moment. "Old stuff, family stuff. You know how it is?" "Sure." I took a sip of my water. "Dr. Reese sounds like a good fit for you." "She is. She has me doing these exercises, writing things down, examining my thoughts and behaviors. It's intense, but I think it's helping. I watched her eat and wondered how many times she'd looked at me across this table while hiding murder. Tyler was 4 years younger than me, which meant I'd spent most of our childhood either protecting him or cleaning up his messes. He was the kind of kid who climbed trees he couldn't get down from, who trusted everyone until they gave him a reason not to. He'd follow me anywhere, believing completely that his big brother would keep him safe. When the addiction started in his 20s, I blamed myself. I should have seen the signs earlier, should have intervened sooner. The pills came first, leftover painkillers from a work injury that spiraled into something darker. Then harder substances when the pills weren't enough. I watched my brother disappear into someone I didn't recognize. Watched him steal from our parents, lie to everyone who loved him, burn every bridge that tried to lead him back to solid ground. But Tyler had fought his way back. 2 years sober when he died. He'd been going to meetings, working as a carpenter, rebuilding his life one day at a time. The last time we grabbed lunch together, a week before he died, he'd been the happiest I'd seen him in years. I feel like myself again, he'd told me. Like the real me finally came back. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. He'd reached across the table and squeezed my arm. You never gave up on me, even when everyone else did. You're my brother. I know. But you could have walked away. A lot of people did. He looked down at his food. I'm trying to make it up to you, to everyone. I'm trying to be better. You already are better. He'd smiled then, but there was something behind his eyes, something troubled. Everything okay? I'd asked. Yeah, I'm fine. He pushed his food around his plate. Actually, no. I need to tell you something about Brooke. My stomach had tightened. What about her? Not here, not like this. Can you meet me at the cabin this weekend, Saturday afternoon? I've got some things to show you. Evidence. Evidence of what? He'd looked at me then, and something in his expression made me cold. Just trust me, Austin. Please. It's important. You're scaring me. I don't mean to. But it's big. And I need you to see it for yourself, not just hear me tell you about it. I need you to understand that I wouldn't bring this to you unless I was absolutely sure. Sure about what? Saturday, he'd said. We'll talk Saturday. But Saturday came with a crisis at work. A server breach at our biggest client that needed all hands on deck. I'd called Tyler and told him I couldn't make it, that we'd have to reschedule. Can it wait? He'd asked, and I could hear something like desperation in his voice. I'm sorry, Tyler. This is huge. If we don't contain it, people's financial data could be compromised. Thousands of people. Right. No, I get it. A long pause. I'm going up there anyway. I need to think. But Monday, okay? We talk Monday, no matter what. Monday, I promise. I love you, Austin. The words surprised me. Tyler wasn't usually effusive. I love you too. Are you sure you're okay? I will be, after Monday. There was no Monday. By Sunday morning, Tyler was dead. Found floating face down in the lake by a couple on a fishing trip. The coroner ruled it accidental drowning. His blood alcohol was 0.08, just above the legal limit. The official story was that he'd relapsed, had a few drinks, slipped off the dock in the dark. I'd never questioned it. The grief was too heavy to allow for questions. But now, lying next to Brooke in the darkness while she slept peacefully beside me, I replayed that final phone call. Tyler had wanted to tell me something about my wife. He'd had evidence. He'd needed me to see it for myself. And 3 days later, he was dead. I'm a software architect specializing in cybersecurity. I spend my days finding vulnerabilities in systems, tracing paths through code, identifying weaknesses that others miss. These skills translate surprisingly well to investigating your own wife. The morning after I found the notebook, I called in sick to work, something I never did, and started building my case. Our cloud backup was the first stop. Brooke thought she understood technology, but she didn't understand it the way I did. Deleted photos aren't really deleted. They leave ghosts in the system, metadata trails, recovery pathways. Within an hour, I'd pulled a folder of images she'd erased over the past 8 months. The man in the photos was handsome in that generic, wealthy way. Graying temples, expensive watch, the kind of tan you get from weekend golf. They were in restaurants, hotel rooms, once on what looked like a private beach somewhere tropical. In several of the pictures, she was looking at him the way she used to look at me. I studied the photos longer than I needed to. Not out of masochism, but analysis. Where were they taken? When? Were there patterns I could use? Every image was data, every smile a piece of evidence. The beach photos were geotagged to the Cayman Islands. I pulled up our credit card statements from that period. She'd told me she was at a marketing conference in Dallas. The lies were everywhere, so deeply woven into our daily life that I marveled she could keep them straight. I saved everything to an encrypted drive and kept searching. The financial records were next. I'd always handled our investments, but I'd given Brooke joint access to everything. Trust. What a concept. Now I traced every transaction for the past 3 years, and there it was. A series of transfers to an account I'd never seen. $47,000, moved in chunks small enough to avoid triggering automatic alerts. The amounts were random. $3,200 here, $4,700 there. Designed to look like normal household expenses if anyone happened to glance at the statements. Some of it went to an account in her father's name, the hiding she'd mentioned in the notebook. Grant Holloway, my father-in-law. I'd always known he looked down on me. Not rich enough, not connected enough for his precious daughter. At family gatherings, he'd make subtle digs about my career, my car, the neighborhood we lived in. Austin's doing fine for his field, he'd say, as if cybersecurity was some kind of hobby rather than a legitimate profession. Not everyone can be ambitious. Apparently, he was willing to help his daughter steal from me to reinforce his belief that I wasn't worth her time. I drove to the county records office that afternoon and requested the full police report on Tyler's death. The clerk was a tired woman in her 50s who barely glanced at my ID before handing over the file. "You family?" she asked. "Brother." She nodded, suddenly gentle. "I'm sorry for your loss." Reading it in my car in the parking lot, something nagged at me. Tyler's blood alcohol was 0.08. For a recovering alcoholic with 2 years of sobriety, that meant he'd consciously chosen to drink. A deliberate relapse. But Tyler had been passionate about his recovery. He went to meetings 3 times a week. He had a sponsor he talked to daily. He'd told me once that the thought of drinking again made him physically sick, that he could remember too clearly what it had done to him, to everyone who loved him. The night before he was supposed to tell me something important about my wife, he just decided to throw all that away? I didn't believe it. Not anymore. Megan Torres still had Tyler's eyes in her contact photos. I found her through his old social media accounts, traced her to a law firm downtown where she worked as a paralegal. When I called and explained who I was, she went silent for a long moment. I wondered if you'd ever reach out, she finally said. There were times I almost called you, but I never knew what to say. Can we meet? Yes. There's a coffee place on Maple, the one with the blue awning. Can you come tomorrow? I need to prepare myself. Of course. She was already there when I arrived the next morning. A dark-haired woman with nervous hands wrapped around a mug of something she wasn't drinking. She looked like she hadn't slept well. He talked about you all the time, she said by way of greeting. His big brother. The one who always had his act together. I'm not sure that was ever true. It was true to him, she smiled sadly. He looked up to you so much. You were his hero, Austin. The person he wanted to be when he finally got his life together. I sat down across from her, ordered a coffee I didn't want just to have something to hold. I need to ask you some things. About the weeks before he died. I know. She took a breath. That's why I agreed to meet. I've been carrying this for 3 years and I can't do it anymore. Carrying what? She glanced around the coffee shop, lowering her voice. Tyler was agitated before he died. Stressed in a way I'd never seen. I kept asking him what was wrong and he kept saying he couldn't tell me yet, that he had to be sure first. Sure about what? About her, about Brooke. She met my eyes. He found something. Evidence that she was stealing from you and having an affair. Not the first time either. He'd been gathering proof for weeks, working on it every night after I went to bed. How did he find out? I'm not sure. He wouldn't tell me the details. But I think it started with something financial. A receipt or a statement that didn't add up. You know how Tyler was. Once something bothered him, he couldn't let it go. That was true. Tyler had been stubborn to a fault, the kind of person who would spend hours trying to solve a puzzle rather than admit defeat. Why didn't he just tell me? He was going to, that weekend at the cabin. Megan shook her head. But he wanted to give her a chance first. He was going to confront her, give her the option of coming clean herself. He didn't want to blow up your marriage if she was willing to confess and make things right. He was going to let her confess? Tyler believed in second chances. He'd been given so many of them during his addiction. By you, by your parents, by me. He thought everyone deserved the opportunity to do the right thing. Her eyes were wet now. He told me that if Brooke owned up to it, admitted everything and promised to change, he'd let her tell you in her own way. He'd be there for support, but he wouldn't be the one to destroy your marriage. And if she didn't confess? Then he was going to tell you everything. Show you all the evidence. He said you deserved to know the truth one way or another. He confronted her? I think so, the night he died. Megan reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. He gave me this about a week before. Told me to keep it safe, that if anything happened to him, I should give it to you. The drive was warm from her hand. I closed my fingers around it. Why didn't you give it to me sooner? Because I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Tyler was a recovering addict. Sometimes they relapse. Sometimes accidents happen. Her eyes spilled over now, tears running down her cheeks. I told myself the story everyone else told. It was easier than believing something terrible had happened. Easier than thinking that maybe I should have done something, said something, pushed harder for answers. And now? Now I think I've been living with guilt for 3 years because I was too scared to face the truth. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. I hope whatever's on that drive helps you find it. I waited until Brooke was asleep that night before plugging the USB into my laptop in the basement office. The drive contained 3 folders: financial records, photos, and audio. The financial records documented the theft in meticulous detail. Tyler had somehow obtained account statements, transfer records, a paper trail that led from my investments to Brooke's hidden account to her father's business holdings. He must have worked on this for months. The photos were harder to look at. Brooke with a man I didn't recognize. Not the same one from the recent pictures. This was a different affair, older. The timestamps showed these were from 4 years ago, before Tyler died. But the audio file was what stopped my heart. It was labeled simply, "Cabin Recording Final." I put in my earbuds and pressed play. There was ambient noise at first: wind, water, the creak of the cabin's old wooden deck. Then footsteps, and Tyler's voice, nervous but determined. "I have everything documented. The money you stole, the affair with Marcus, it's all here." Then Brooke, cold in a way I'd never heard her. "Tyler, you don't understand. This isn't what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like. You've been lying to my brother for years, stealing from him, sleeping with other men. He deserves to know." "And what good will that do? You'll destroy my marriage. Austin will leave me. I'll lose everything." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you did all this." A long pause. Then Brooke's voice again, lower, more controlled. "What do you want? Money? I can get you money." "I don't want money." "Then what? What is it you want from me, Tyler?" "I want you to tell him the truth. Tomorrow. You call Austin and you tell him everything, or I will." "I can't do that." "You can. It's the right thing to do. I'm giving you a chance here, more than you deserve." "He'll leave me." "Maybe, or maybe he won't. Maybe he'll find a way to forgive you, but either way he needs to know who he's married to." "Tyler." Her voice had changed now, something harder underneath. Colder. "I will not let you destroy my life." "Brooke, you think I've spent all these years building something just to watch you tear it down? Because you want to play hero for your brother? This isn't about being a hero. This is about doing what's right." "Right," she laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And what makes you the judge of what's right? You're an addict, Tyler, a junkie who nearly destroyed his whole family. What gives you the authority to judge anyone?" The sound of movement. Footsteps on wood. Tyler's voice, sharper now. "That's not fair." "It's perfectly fair. You want to tell Austin about my sins? Fine. Then I'll tell him about all the money you stole from your parents, all the lies you told during your using days. How many chances did they give you? How many times did they forgive you?" "That's different." "Is it?" "Because from where I'm standing, we're both just people who made mistakes. The only difference is that I didn't get caught. You're getting caught now." More movement. The sound of a struggle. Shuffling. A gasp. "Let go of me." A splash. A loud, violent splash. Then Brooke, screaming. "Tyler! Tyler!" Splashing. Frantic movement. Then nothing. The recording continued for another 40 minutes. Just the sound of water lapping against the dock. An owl somewhere in the distance. The wind in the trees. I listened to all of it. Every empty minute. When it ended, I sat in the silence of my basement and felt something in my chest calcify into stone. Brooke had been there that night. She'd lied to the police, told them she was at a conference in Chicago. I remembered now. I'd been at work when the sheriff called, pulling an all-nighter to contain the security breach. Brooke had arrived at the station separately, having cut her trip short when she heard the news. She'd seemed devastated. She'd held me while I cried. But she'd been there, at the cabin, when Tyler went into the water. The audio wasn't definitive enough for a murder conviction. A struggle, a splash. A defense attorney would call it an accident, claim she'd tried to help him. But I knew what I'd heard. The cold calculation in her voice. The threat. She'd pushed him, or she'd watched him drown, or something in between. Either way, my brother was dead because of her. The following week was an exercise in control. Every morning, I made Brooke coffee. Every evening, I asked about her day. I kissed her goodbye and welcomed her home and pretended to be the husband she thought she was manipulating. Meanwhile, I kept digging. Grant Holloway's involvement became clearer through careful research. I tracked wire transfers, phone records, political donations that connected to the county sheriff who'd handled Tyler's case. Grant had given money to Sheriff Patterson's re-election campaign 3 years in a row. They were golf buddies, apparently. Part of the same country club. $50,000 had moved from Grant's account to Brooke's the day after my brother's body was found. The memo line called it a consulting fee. The investigation into Tyler's death had been closed unusually quickly, with minimal forensic work. No one had questioned why a 2-year sober addict would suddenly relapse alone at a lake cabin. No one had looked into why his blood alcohol was barely above the legal limit, enough to suggest impairment, but not enough to suggest a serious binge. Grant hadn't just helped Brooke hide stolen money, he'd helped cover up what happened at the lake. I was alone in this. I couldn't go to the police. Grant had connections everywhere, and the evidence might not be enough for charges. I couldn't confront Brooke. She'd lie, manipulate, potentially destroy evidence. I couldn't tell anyone what I knew without alerting my targets before I was ready. So I did what I do best. I planned. The first week was dedicated to organization. I bought a separate laptop, paid cash at a store 3 towns away, and created encrypted files for everything I'd gathered. Photos, documents, audio files, timelines. I cross-referenced dates, built connections, mapped out every lie Brooke had told and when she'd told it. The second week was strategy. I identified my targets. Brooke herself, Derek the unwitting accomplice, Grant the enabler, and the institutions that could amplify my revenge. Her employer, the IRS, the county DA. Each target would require a different approach, a different timeline, a different set of pressures. I made lists. I made contingency plans. I thought about what could go wrong and how to minimize those risks. It was the same methodology I used at work when assessing security vulnerabilities. Identify the weak points, develop exploits, execute systematically. The difference was that this time, the system I was attacking was my own life. Some nights, lying awake while Brooke slept beside me, I questioned what I was becoming. Was this justice or revenge? Did the distinction matter? Tyler was dead, and nothing I did would bring him back. But something in me refused to let her get away with it. Refused to let her walk into a new life with Derek, while my brother rotted in the ground. I told myself I was doing the right thing. Most of the time, I believed it. The affair partner's name was Derek Sullivan. I found him through the metadata on those deleted photos, geotags and timestamps that led me to venture capital conferences, upscale restaurants, a beach resort in the Caribbean. He was 40, divorced, wealthy in the way that comes from other people's money. His social media painted a picture of a man starting over after a difficult marriage, seeking meaning in philanthropy and authentic connections. Recent posts hinted at a new relationship, someone who'd restored his faith in love. If he only knew, I created a profile on a tech networking platform and arranged to be at the same investor meetup where Derek was a featured speaker. The event was in a downtown hotel ballroom, packed with people in expensive suits talking about disruption and synergy. Derek spoke about due diligence in early-stage investments. He was actually pretty good. Afterward, at the cocktail hour, I introduced myself. "Great talk," I said, offering my hand. "The part about red flags and founder behavior. Really insightful." He had a firm handshake and an eager smile. "Thanks, appreciate it. You're in tech?" "Cybersecurity, mostly enterprise stuff, but I've been looking at pivoting into the private sector. Maybe starting something of my own." "Really? That's exciting. There's definitely money in security right now." We talked for an hour. Derek was charming in a rehearsed way, dropping names and figures to impress. But there was something genuine underneath. He asked thoughtful questions about my work. He remembered details from earlier in our conversation. He wasn't a bad person, just a naive one. By the end of the night, we'd exchanged numbers. Over the next 2 weeks, we met 3 more times. Each meeting was carefully orchestrated, each conversation designed to build trust while extracting information. The first time was drinks at a downtown bar, the kind of place with leather booths and $8 cocktails. "So what got you into venture capital?" I asked, genuinely curious despite my ulterior motives. "Honestly? Ego." He laughed. "I was a decent analyst, but I wanted to be the one making the big calls, picking winners. And I've been lucky, or maybe good, who knows, but the returns have been solid." "That takes guts, betting on startups." "It's not really betting when you do your homework, due diligence like I mentioned in my talk. Most people skip that part because it's boring. They fall in love with an idea, a founder, a story. They don't dig into the numbers." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was a man who preached due diligence while being completely blind to the woman sharing his bed. Our second meeting was coffee near his office, squeezed between his morning meetings. He talked about his divorce, more than he probably should have. "She'd been cheating for years," he said, stirring his latte. "Multiple guys. I was the last to know. Everyone felt sorry for me, which was almost worse than the betrayal itself. The pity." "How'd you find out?" "Credit card statement. She'd gotten sloppy, used our joint card for a hotel room. When I confronted her, she tried to turn it around on me. Said I'd been distant, I'd driven her to it. Classic gaslighting." "That's rough." It was. Took me a year to trust anyone again, to believe that not everyone was hiding something. He looked at me with earnest eyes. "That's why this new relationship feels so special. She's completely honest with me. About everything." I almost choked on my coffee. Then came the lunch where I casually mentioned my wife and watched his reaction. "How long have you been married?" he asked, just a little too interested. 9 years. You? Divorced 2 years ago. Brutal process, honestly. We'd grown apart over the years, and then it turned out she'd been unfaithful for most of our marriage. He shrugged, trying to look casual about it. "Took me a while to trust anyone again." "I'm sorry, that must have been rough." "It was, but I've met someone recently." He smiled the way people do when they're thinking about a person they love. "She's incredible. Going through a rough time herself, but she's so strong. So brave." "Yeah? Tell me about her." He told me more than he should have. About her unhappy marriage, her controlling husband, how she was planning to leave but needed time to get her finances in order. About how they'd connected at a conference 8 months ago and fallen hard. She's the kind of person who lights up a room, you know? Everyone gravitates toward her, and she chose me. He laughed, almost embarrassed by his own sincerity. I feel like the luckiest man in the world. Sounds special. She is. She really is. And she's leaving him soon. Her husband, I mean. Then we can finally start our real life together. I'm even looking at houses with enough room for her to have an office. She wants to start her own marketing consultancy. When's she leaving him? Within the next few months, once she's got everything sorted on her end. Finances, legal stuff. It's complicated. I nodded sympathetically and filed every word away. 2 weeks later, I asked Derek to meet me at a quiet bar. Somewhere private, I said. I had something important to discuss, something personal. He arrived looking curious but trusting. We'd built a rapport over those weeks. He thought we were becoming friends. His face when I slid the folder across the table was something I'll remember forever. Confusion, then fear, then slow, dawning horror. What is this? Open it. Inside were photos of Brooke with her previous affair partner, the man from Tyler's files. There were financial records showing money siphoned from my accounts. There was a partial transcript of the cabin audio, carefully edited to show Brooke admitting to theft and infidelity while hiding the part about Tyler's death. Her name is Brooke Carter, I said quietly. She's my wife. Derek's face went white. What? I'm not here to threaten you or blame you. This isn't about you and me. But I thought you deserved to know who she really is before you threw your whole life away for her. He flipped through the documents, hands shaking. This can't be right. She told you her husband was cold, distant, maybe controlling, that the marriage was over in all but name, that she just needed time to escape. He looked at me, and I could see the answer in his eyes. She's done this before, Derek. The affair you're having isn't her first. The man in those photos, that was 4 years ago. She has a pattern. I leaned forward. And the money she's talking about using to start a new life with you? Some of it's stolen. From me. I don't believe this. You don't have to believe me. Verify it yourself. You have the resources, the connections. Do your due diligence like you talked about in your speech. I stood up, dropping some bills on the table for our drinks. I just thought you deserved to know the truth before you became the next man she lies to. His hand shot out, grabbing my arm. Wait, please, just sit down for a minute. I hesitated, then sat. Why are you telling me this? His voice was raw. What do you want from me? I don't want anything from you, Derek. You're not my enemy. You're just collateral damage in something that started long before you met her. But why not just confront her? Or go to the police? Why come to me? Because you deserve to make an informed choice. Because my brother tried to give her a chance to come clean, and it cost him his life. I let that land. And because I wanted to look in your eyes and see if you were the kind of man who helps women cheat on their husbands, or if you were just another victim. I didn't know. His voice cracked. She told me her marriage was over. She told me he was cold, neglectful. She made it sound like she was trapped. I'm sure she did. She's very convincing. He stared at the documents for a long moment. Then, quietly, what happened to your brother? I met his eyes. That's something I'm still finding out. I left him there, staring at the folder like it might burst into flames. Phase 2 was the money. I'd spent weeks documenting everything. The $47,000 from my investment account. The additional $23,000 siphoned from our joint savings over the years in small amounts. $35,000 in questionable expense reports from her company. Inflated receipts. fake vendor payments, phantom consulting fees, found in emails she'd thought she'd permanently deleted. The package I sent to Brooke's corporate compliance department was comprehensive and anonymous. I used a burner email account routed through 3 different VPNs, printed the documents at a public library, mailed them from a postal box 2 towns over. It arrived on a Wednesday morning, 24 hours before the quarterly shareholder meeting. I also forwarded documentation of Grant's role in hiding the money to a forensic accountant I'd hired under a false pretext. He identified potential tax fraud in the structure of the transactions. The way Grant had disguised the transfers as business expenses, the discrepancies in his reported income. The IRS complaint was filed on the same day. The dominoes started falling on a Friday. Brooke came home from work early, her face puffy and red. She'd been crying, really crying, not the performative tears I'd seen her use when she wanted something. "What happened?" I asked, playing the concerned husband. "There's an investigation. At work." She collapsed onto the couch, still wearing her coat. "Someone sent compliance a bunch of documents, expense reports, financial records. They're saying I embezzled money." I sat next to her, put my arm around her shoulders. "That's insane. You'd never do anything like that." "I know. It must be some kind of mistake, or someone's trying to set me up." She leaned into me, seeking comfort from the man systematically destroying her life. "They put me on administrative leave, pending investigation. They took my laptop, my badge. They walked me out in front of everyone." "We'll figure it out," I said. "Whatever this is, we'll fight it together." "How can anyone think I would do this? I've given that company 8 years. 8 years of my life." "I know, baby. I know." That night, her phone buzzed with a text she tried to hide from me. She angled it away, but I caught a glimpse of the preview. "I don't think we should—" I didn't need to see the rest. I already knew what it said. Derek had stopped returning her calls. The fairy tale was crumbling. A week later, Grant called the house and I made sure to answer. "Is Brooke there?" His voice was strained, none of its usual condescension. "She's in the shower. Everything okay?" "Fine. Everything's fine. Just tell her to call me." But I could hear it, the fear underneath his words. Something was wrong in Grant Holloway's carefully constructed world. Later that night, Brooke told me. The IRS had sent a letter, something about discrepancies in his business accounts, possible audit. "He's freaking out," she said. "I've never heard him so stressed." Tax stuff is scary, but I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. "Yeah." She didn't sound convinced. "Probably." Brooke was unraveling. She wasn't sleeping, barely eating. Dark circles appeared under her eyes, and she'd lost weight in a way that made her look gaunt rather than slim. She'd stare at her phone for hours, waiting for messages that never came. When she did get calls, they were from lawyers, hers or her company's. One night, I came home to find her on the floor of the living room, surrounded by papers, crying. "What's all this?" I asked, playing concerned. "Financial records. They want to see everything. The compliance investigators, they're going back 5 years." She looked up at me, mascara streaked down her face. "Austin, I don't know what to do." I knelt beside her, gathering some of the scattered papers. "Maybe you should call a lawyer, a good one." "I have a lawyer. 3 lawyers, actually. They cost more per hour than I make in a day." She laughed bitterly. "And they keep telling me the same thing. Cooperate, be transparent, hope for the best." That sounds reasonable. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, my career is over. Everyone at the company already thinks I'm guilty. Even if I'm exonerated, who's going to hire someone with this kind of cloud hanging over them? I handed her a tissue. You've still got me. We'll get through this together. She looked at me, really looked, and for a moment I thought I saw guilt flickering behind her eyes. Recognition that she didn't deserve my support, that she was playing a losing hand with marked cards. Then the moment passed, and she was just crying again. The walls were closing in from every direction, and she had no idea that her loving husband was the one tightening the screws. I feel like I'm losing my mind, she said one night, lying in bed beside me. Everything's falling apart and I don't understand why. Maybe it's just a rough patch, I offered. Things will get better. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, Austin, I need to tell you something. Here it comes, I thought. The confession. Finally. I'm pregnant. I'd already known, of course. Found the positive test in the bathroom trash 2 weeks ago. Done the math, the baby couldn't possibly be mine. We hadn't been intimate in months. She'd claimed headaches, stress, exhaustion. Always an excuse. But she didn't know I knew that. In her mind, there was a chance, a slim one, that the baby was mine. And even if it wasn't, she was betting that the news would make me recommit. That I'd forgive whatever came out because I'd want to be a father. Because I'd feel tied to her by something more than marriage. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost beautiful. That's wonderful, I said, pulling her close. Let's start planning a nursery. I sent the invitations 3 weeks later. A gathering at the Lake cabin to mark the 3rd anniversary of Tyler's death. Family and close friends, a chance to remember him together. Brooke didn't want to go. I could see her searching for excuses. The investigation, her stress, the pregnancy. But there was no graceful way to refuse. Her parents would be there. My parents. Our closest friends. Refusing to attend a memorial for her brother-in-law would look heartless. Are you sure you're up for this? She asked, probing for my state of mind. It might be emotional. Maybe we should wait another year. I think it's important. Tyler would have wanted us to gather, to remember him together as a family. Don't you think? Of course. I just worry about you. I'll be fine. Having everyone there will help. She couldn't say no. So 3 days later, we drove up together, making small talk about the nursery and baby names and everything except what was actually happening. The cabin looked the same as always. Wooden deck extending over the water. The dock where my brother took his last breath. I stood on it alone that first evening, while Brooke unpacked inside and tried to imagine his final moments. Had he fought? Had he called out for help? Had she stood right here, watching him drown, doing nothing? I'd never know exactly what happened, but I knew enough. The gathering started at noon the next day. 17 people filled the cabin's main room. My parents, Brooke's parents, a handful of friends who'd known Tyler, and Megan Torres, who I'd invited separately with a cryptic note asking her to trust me. I'd arrived early to set up. The speaker system was hidden behind a stack of books. The folders were in my bag, ready to be distributed. I'd rehearsed what I would say 100 times, though I knew the reality would be different. You can't script the destruction of a life. My mother hugged me when she arrived, her eyes already wet with memories. Thank you for doing this, she whispered. It means so much to have everyone together. It's what Tyler would have wanted. My father shook my hand formally, the way he always did when emotions ran too high for words. Behind him, Brooke's parents emerged from their rental car. Grant in a sport coat that cost more than my first car. His wife, Brooke's mother, Eleanor, in funeral black despite the occasion. Grant looked nervous from the moment he arrived. He'd aged in the weeks since the IRS letter, his confident swagger replaced by something hunched and wary. He kept glancing at Brooke, who kept glancing at me, trying to read what I was thinking. I gave nothing away. The afternoon passed in waves of reminiscence. Stories about Tyler's childhood, his struggles, his recovery. My mother cried through most of it. Even Grant managed a few words about what a fine young man Tyler had been, the hypocrisy so thick I could taste it. At 2 o'clock, I stood up and clinked a fork against my glass. Thank you all for coming. I know today is difficult. It's difficult for all of us who loved Tyler. But I wanted us to be together, to remember him, and to finally understand what happened 3 years ago. Confused looks around the room. Brooke's face went pale. I found something a few weeks ago. Something Tyler wanted me to have. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the portable speaker I'd set up earlier. It's a recording, made right here, on the night he died. Austin, Brooke started, rising from her chair, but I was already pressing play. Tyler's voice filled the room. The confrontation, the accusations. Brooke's cold denials, then her colder threats. I will not let you destroy my life. The sounds of struggle, the splash. My mother's hand covered her mouth. My father's face was stone. Grant was trying to rise from his chair, but his wife pulled him back down with a fierce whisper. The recording played on. The screaming. The silence. The 40 minutes of empty lake sounds while my brother's body cooled in the water. When it ended, no one spoke. The cabin was so quiet I could hear the blood pulsing in my ears. Brooke told the police she was at a conference that night, I said, my voice steady. She lied. She was here. Tyler recorded everything. Brooke was crying now, real tears streaming down her face. It was an accident. Austin, please, you have to believe me. He fell. I tried to help him. You told the police you were in Chicago. I panicked. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. You let them rule it an accident. You let me grieve for 3 years believing my brother relapsed and fell into the lake. You slept next to me every night knowing what really happened. Grant stood up, his voice booming the way it does when he's trying to assert control. This proves nothing. This could be taken out of context. My daughter is not a murderer, and I won't sit here and listen to... Sit down, Grant. I didn't raise my voice, but something in my tone made him listen. I have documentation of your involvement too. The money you wired her the day after Tyler died. The calls you made to Sheriff Patterson. The way the investigation was quietly closed. I pulled a stack of folders from my bag and distributed them around the room. Financial records, phone logs, the timeline of the cover-up. Tyler found out Brooke was stealing from me. He found out she was having an affair, not her first, and not her last. He was going to give her a chance to confess, and if she didn't, he was going to tell me the truth. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time in years. He died because he tried to protect me. My mother was sobbing now, clutching my father's arm. Megan had tears running down her face, but she nodded at me, a small gesture of solidarity. Grant was shouting about lawyers and slander, and how I'd regret this. Brooke was trying to explain, to justify, to minimize. You don't understand what it was like, she said, her voice high and desperate. He was threatening everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for. He was trying to protect your husband. My mother's voice cut through the room, sharp with grief. He was trying to do the right thing, and you let him drown. I didn't let him. It was an accident. Then why did you lie? My father spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but devastating. Why did you tell the police you were in Chicago if it was just an accident? Brooke had no answer. My mother stood up, steadied herself against a chair. I want to hear you say it. Look at me and tell me what happened to my son. Mrs. Carter, tell me. The room went silent. Brooke's facade finally cracked completely. Not the theatrical tears she'd used for years, but something raw and ugly. We argued, she said, barely audible. He was going to ruin everything. My marriage, my job, my relationship with my family. I begged him not to. I told him I'd change, I'd pay back the money, I'd end things with Marcus. But he wouldn't listen. He said Austin deserved the truth. And then, I grabbed his arm. I was trying to stop him from leaving. He pulled away and he lost his balance. He went into the water. Her voice broke. I tried to help him. I swear I tried. But it was dark, and the water was cold, and he went under. For 40 minutes, I said. You stood there for 40 minutes while he was in that water. The recording captured all of it. She had nothing to say to that. But I was done listening. I've sent copies of everything to the county DA, I said. They're reopening Tyler's case. 6 weeks later, I signed the final divorce papers in my attorney's office. The weeks between the cabin revelation and this moment had been a blur of legal proceedings, media inquiries, and uncomfortable conversations. The local news picked up the story. Businessman's death reopened after new evidence. And suddenly everyone wanted to know what had really happened at the lake 3 years ago. Brooke hired a crisis management firm, then fired them when she couldn't afford their rates anymore. She gave one disastrous interview where she tried to paint herself as a victim of circumstance, but the audio recording had already gone viral. Comment sections filled with people calling her a murderer, a liar, a monster. Part of me felt the justice of it. A larger part felt hollow. My attorney slid the final document across his desk. Sign here and here and here. That's it? That's it. 9 years, reduced to paperwork. I signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Before you go, my attorney said, there's something you should know. Her attorney reached out this morning. She wants to talk. Says she has things she needs to say to you. No. You don't want to hear what There's nothing she could say that would change anything. Nothing she could explain that would bring Tyler back or undo the last 3 years. I gathered my copies of the documents. She had her chance to talk. She had 1,000 chances. She chose to lie instead. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think that's the right call. I stopped at the door. What would you have done? In my position? He was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I don't know. What you went through, that's beyond anything I can imagine. But I know this. You handled it better than most people would have. You were strategic, you were patient, and in the end, you got justice. Is that what this is? Justice? Close enough, he said. Close enough. Brooke was gone. Not just from my life, but from the life she'd built so carefully. Her company had fired her after the compliance investigation confirmed the embezzlement. Derek had filed a restraining order after she'd shown up at his office, begging him to believe her side of the story. Grant was facing federal tax charges and had cut her off financially to protect his remaining assets. The DA couldn't charge her with murder. The audio wasn't conclusive enough, and too much time had passed for forensic evidence. But the truth was public now. She was the woman who might have killed her brother-in-law, who definitely helped cover it up. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. In the divorce settlement, I documented the fraud, the hidden money, the theft from our accounts. Her attorney advised her to settle rather than face a public trial that would expose every detail. She got nothing. The baby, I learned later, had never existed. She'd faked the pregnancy test, bought a positive one online to manipulate me into staying. When I demanded medical verification, the whole deception fell apart. One more lie in a fortress built of them. I sold the house we'd bought together. The one she hated. The one downtown she'd always wanted was now far beyond her means. The coffee shop on Maple looked different in winter, stripped bare of the outdoor seating where Megan and I had first talked. Snow dusted the sidewalk, and the windows were fogged with warmth. She was waiting at a corner table when I arrived, 2 steaming mugs already in front of her. "You look better," she said as I sat down. "I feel better. Not good exactly, but better." That's more than I expected, honestly, after everything. I shrugged. The therapist I've been seeing says I'm processing healthily, whatever that means. "You're seeing someone? That's good." She smiled. "Tyler would approve. He always said you kept too much bottled up." He was probably right. About a lot of things, it turns out. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping our drinks. Outside, a couple walked past, bundled against the cold, laughing at something one of them had said. "Can I ask you something?" Megan said. "Sure." "Do you regret it? The way you handled things?" I considered the question. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that Tyler's dead and nothing I did will change that. But the way I handled it? I shook my head. No. She would have gotten away with everything. The money, the affairs, what happened at the lake. She would have waltzed into a new life with Derek and never looked back. And now? Now she has to live with the consequences, just like the rest of us. Megan nodded, understanding in a way that didn't require explanation. What happens now? I'm thinking of traveling. Tyler always wanted to see Japan, New Zealand, Iceland. I wrapped my hands around the coffee. Maybe I'll go to all of them. He'd like that. She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. I'm moving on too. Finally put in my notice at the firm. There's a nonprofit in Seattle that's been recruiting me. Fresh start. Something like that. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Megan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. What you did, what you had to do, that took strength. Tyler would be proud of you. I hope so. We finished our coffee and said goodbye in the parking lot. She hugged me and I let her, and then she was gone. I walked to my car, keys in hand, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. The text said, "I know what you did, the way you planned all this. I found your notebook." I stopped in the middle of the parking lot, cold air biting at my face. Someone had found my documentation, the timeline I'd built, the methodical plan that had dismantled Brooke's life piece by piece. I'd been careful, but apparently not careful enough. I looked at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Some truths are meant to be found." I deleted the conversation, slipped the phone into my pocket, and walked into the winter sunlight. The air was cold but clean, the kind of cold that feels like possibility. Behind me, the coffee shop's door swung shut, sealing off the warmth inside. Ahead of me, the street stretched toward a future I couldn't see but was finally free to build. Tyler had died believing some things were worth exposing, no matter the cost. He'd confronted Brooke not out of cruelty or revenge, but out of love for his brother. Out of the belief that I deserved to know who I'd married. I'd honored that belief the only way I knew how. Not with his grace, not with his willingness to offer second chances, but with truth. With consequences. With the systematic dismantling of a lie that had cost him his life. Was it enough? I didn't know. Some wounds don't heal, they just stop bleeding. But the plane tickets to Tokyo were in my apartment. 3 weeks from now, I'd be on the other side of the world, seeing the cherry blossoms Tyler had always talked about. Walking the streets of a city where no one knew my name or my history. Starting something new. It was time to start living again. The car started on the first try. I pulled out of the parking lot and merged onto the main road, the town I'd lived in for a decade, sliding past my windows like scenes from someone else's life. In the rearview mirror, I could see the coffee shop getting smaller. The past getting smaller. I didn't look back.